Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to another episode. In this episode, I was fascinated by a picture and also a concept that accompanied that picture. And so I was looking at the archetype I currently am functioning in the sense of a human being in 2021 after 4 billion years of evolution and genetical resurrection and reincarnation. You know, the genetical pattern that is within me in some sense has expressed onto a digital space. And what that means is we were objects in the same world. But these objects found a way to share their inner realms. What that means is that right now I can say a concept, and when it comes to teleportation technology, we have managed to teleport audio and video. And of course, for these talks, because the ideas are more important, I don't keep it as a video. But what I'm trying to say is that the inner realm, the mind of human beings, of creatures, is being shared, and there's a global platform to share it. And this has a ridiculous value right now, you know. And so, in the title of this episode, I have written ancient podcasters and a commentary on language's role, and in the subtitle, what can be done with the inner realm. So pretty much in this episode, I'm making it a task for myself to share with the audience what can be done with the inner realm. I feel it's one of those questions that I can't ignore, so I've gone to the question. First of all, something about the picture. This picture, I don't know who drew it, probably some famous painter in history, but the person this is depicting is Hermes. And in ancient Egypt, Hermes was the god with the bird head. You know, some people are going to be like, Mr.Within, is that the best way to explain it? And so I'll show people an image of Hermes. And so Hermes is the archetype of wisdom in human form. You can say it's the closest thing human beings have to an avatar of wisdom. But of course, different cultures are different. For example, in ancient Greek mythology, we have Athena being the sign of wisdom. And so how Athena in some sense is released into the realm, if I remember correctly in Greek mythology, is that Zeus comes and sees Kronos, you know, the darkness of the realm. Pretty much that archetype has consumed all of Zeus's siblings, and so Zeus goes on a rage and in some sense releases his siblings by defeating Kronos, and from the forehead of Kronos, Athena marches out, you know, a sort of symbol of wisdom. You know, you can even connect third eye connotation to it. And so this is the picture of Hermes, I would say. Here, I'll show it to the audience. This is straight from ancient Egypt, folks. You know, the picture I'm going to show you. You know. There we go. So Hermes was an avatar for wisdom. It was like the face of the logos, you can say. And so this person who drew this picture, it's a representation of any time higher consciousness leaks into this dimension. And what it means is that we're living in a multidimensional realm. There's various states of being. Some of reality, let's say 50% of reality is a physical phenomena, 50% of it is an internal phenomena. And this internal phenomena creates a space between the object and the user of any object, or I should say between the experienced and the experiencer, right? And so the experiencer of reality is not an object, what the experience of reality is. as we currently believe. Now this picture I'm going to show you as soon as I find it. There we go. So this is the archetype. This is who Hermes was thought to be. So this picture you see in the wallpaper, where the person's holding the staff, that is supposed to represent in an ancient Egyptian context that bird in the picture. Now, I keep saying now, but but I want to explain what this picture represents and what that man in the blue cloak is in some sense trying to do. I want to go into the psychology of not just a creature that receives reality, but a creature that shares reality, and in some sense, what sort of rhythm or intelligence follows that. You see, based on, I find that we have this view, intelligence is from the person beforehand. It's how the person has managed and processed their past so far, right? That's what we consider intelligence to be. But there's a type of intelligence which is instantaneous response, and what that means is, believe it or not, one of the most advanced states a human being can go into is a state where beyond identity, intelligence functions, and the secrets of that intelligence are way superior than what your eyes and the sensory realm share with you. So what that means is that there's a moment where the inner realms and outer realms, like a video game, are paused, and then the real witness is noticed. When that real witness is noticed, you can say this man with the staff is like a human being who has realized that in some sense there's an automation to truth. So what is happening in his experience is that the divine reality is just playing out towards the intuitive expectation. And so I would say Hermes is the first podcaster, and so what it is sharing not just the voice of a creature. That means any creature can make sound, but it is in some sense what that sound is used for, or how the language paints the moment where really meaning is there, or there is some sort of sophistication. So now, all of this taking me to a point where I am in some sense wondering if I'm a person right now in history saying, hey humanity, we got inner realms, let's pay attention to that and do something. But then I was thinking, what can we realistically do? What can we do with an intelligence that simulates itself upon itself to enhance our survival? And it took me a while, because for me, power was not just, the concept of power was not just through force, brute force. You can say a person has a sort of power in regards to he can move things, like a brute strength. And then there's a power of pointing to the important. This power is not like a power like, how would I say, that can be controlled. You know what it is? Imagine there's a clean glass and somebody's drinking water from a dirty glass. And so it's as if Hermes went up to all the people at the time and was like, stop drinking from the dirty glass. What does that mean? That means pointing to the significance of reality. That means people have been having an experience, and the universal sector has been is having an experience. Now, some rare human beings arrive in the human station to, in some sense, in accordance to their past karma, and to sort of live it out, they share the relationship of the universal sector with itself, which is dehumanized, with a humanized state of mind. And what happens when this takes place? The human being is introduced to the unknown. So what is going on in this picture, I would say, let me get rid of the ancient Greek. What is going on in this picture is, in some sense, Hermes trying to it's as if everybody in their inner realms I'm trying to think how I can explain this picture. Language creates reality, we know this. Language is image-based, we know this. Language that is image-based, or if we let's say new language or poetry, that is creating new images. So I would say the reaction of the people in this picture are a reaction to how they have heard a new film behind their eyes. They have seen a new film. Now, honestly, I have no idea with what intention the painter drew this picture, but I have dwelled around the concept of wisdom for a while. It was like, out of all the ideas on this earth, I selected that, and the reason I selected that is because I wanted to see how far the inner realms have extended, right? But the greatest idea they have come to is transcendence. That's it. What can you do when you're in a room of shape? Right? So you go beyond the shape, right? So if there is knowledge of something beyond shape, that means that if there is something beyond shape in the world, that will suddenly get a nostalgia, a remembrance. What I feel is, in some sense, happening is that, yes, the biological body, we attribute it to the personality of the person, their individualism. Now, how the ego moves in certain traditions, they see that as God. That means the other side of the ego is one divine universal event. That means if the idea of a self was like sunglasses, when you take off the idea of the self, you are everything happening. When you put on the idea of the self, you know, you look good as an individual. So. Now, I would say I want to apply and implement a model of perception that I have designed. And I wondered, how can I try to share with the people, just like I don't have kids, but I thought in the future if I had kids, how would I share with them what the universe is in the quickest way? And then I categorized it into 4 dimensions. I often speak about this, the ring of the absent heaven. I say 0, 1, 2, infinity. What that means is I see 4 dimensions to a singular point. And what that means is that how we use our inner realms, first of all, is 1/4 of reality. What I mean by this is that the mind, where we have the story of ourself, is actually like the story of ourself is made of language, and language is contained in the mind, and the mind all changes, like just like how people change clothing, the mind changes the language of meaning in accordance to its experiences. So because there's language involved in this, the mind being a sort of story, in my personal system of thought, duality, language can be categorized as duality, and duality is 1/4 of possible reality. Now, what is the hard problem here? Not hard problem, but what is the challenge of just trying to figure out what the dimensions of the universe is, that the moment you create dimensions to it, you also create a relationship between those dimensions. So what it is like a man, like here's the thing, let me tell you, like, it's a bit strange, but it's like women can create human beings, and every human mind, I'm not talking about the genetics per se, but I'm saying the mind, every human mind has to create to know that it is there. So the mind, because it moves in dualism, and the realm is very dualistic. And when I say dualism, guys, this is the most important, one of the most important ideas on this planet. Dualism means chaos and order walked into the room of reality at the same time. You know, in ancient, I would say, when we look at reality through ancient Greek metaphysics, chaos, chronos, Like that chaos was the first thing in reality. So reality was never ordered. There were never gods. There was just chaos, right, in Greek mythology. But if we were to entertain the mythology of the Abrahamic religions, their visions of reality, in the Abrahamic religions, first there was order. So what it is that from the religious mindset, we are living inside the order of a superior mind, right? That's why people who commit sin, they feel they're being watched by truth and they need to repent. So to be observant of these relationships and duality being 1/4 of reality, that means language is 1/4 of the world. And I know I'm repeating here, but there's something to it. So we use language to comprehend emptiness. We see language falls short. We use language to comprehend oneness, and language can't do that. We use language to become infinite, and that's the only thing we can do, right? Because the other angles of language used, they lead to suffering. So it's not about just creating it's not about accessing an advanced technology. It's also, in some sense, a sort of safety of not falling, how would I say? It's like the technology is as advanced as the user. And you know, this is the reality of life, where if people on this planet are more happy, they will go towards a happier karma. You know? If we are sad, we'll just enter a sad world, you know? And who has time for a sad world when there's so much unknown variables everywhere? You know, I feel it is art to be selfless. Excuse me. To realize that the self will leave you at some point. You know, and we attach to it our whole lives. You know, we attach to our identity as if we are it, just to realize that tomorrow when we wake up, novelty will welcome us again. So I've written 4 codes, 4 ways that this ring of the absent heaven 0, 1 to infinity model. So I've seen 4 possibilities of the role of language in accordance to other dimensions. So think of it this way. First line of code, 0, 1 to infinity. Second line of code, 1 to infinity 0. Then a third line of code, 2 infinity 0, 1. And then the fourth line of code is infinity 0, 1, 2. And so what do I mean by this? This means the order of reality. So at what phase the duality is relevant to all the other dimensions. If we start from 0, 1 to infinity, this is how everybody right now on this earth is perceiving it. We feel we came from nothing. We feel we became a singular, we became an individual. This individual saw chaos and order, which is the number 2. And then what can you do with chaos and order? You can infinitely continue. That's all that really an object can do. An object can just stick around to see how else things change until it realizes it has changed, and then sight graduates. You know, I would say the next way that I would, okay, so 0, 1 to infinity. I gotta change the music. All right. Hermes was an archetype of wisdom. Wisdom was in some sense a sort of search for truth. The wisest thing a person can do in this life is to figure out what's going on, and our brains create probabilities in response to any stimulus or where we direct them. So where your attention goes, your whole past memory responds to. Now, I said that I'm using this model of 0, 1 to infinity, see each symbol, each number, as in some sense a universe. So imagine there's 4 types of universes, and so I'm talking about how one universe, duality, has a relationship with all the other ones. In our current world right now, duality is the context of the world, and it is sandwiched between infinity and singularity. So what we find, people, the idea of people going through on this planet, they're either trying to fly to oneness or in some sense crawl towards the infinite. You know, or I should use probably better wording, fly towards the infinite or fly towards oneness. I'm telling you, all human psychology in the dualistic framework has 2 outlets. So what that means is we can use our inner realms and language to interact with oneness and to interact with the infinite archetype. Right, with these archetypes, universal archetypes, if we engage the infinite, that means every relationship of chaos and order is put between 2 mirrors. It has an ultimate reflection. So it would be making the dual multidimensional. And the reason I don't say there's a 3rd dimension, 4th dimension, 5th dimension, because after duality, you pretty much have infinity. It becomes something like 2 times 2 times 2, and the number goes endlessly on. So when you have duality, you can access infinity. So we can use our mind to research, treating it as if, even though we've been on this planet for a while, but we can in any moment treat it as if we just got here. And when we just got here, we have to understand the meaning of the world again. Right? And so in that search, we're wondering about the relationships of man's dualistic life with man's singular being. Right? We're doing a lot of things in life that give a meaning to us, but everything we're doing is simultaneously being. So the level of the intelligence of being is beyond the language threshold. So what we can do is expand like a balloon. We're in like language and the linguistic simulation is like a balloon, imagine, and we are inside the balloon and we think there's nothing else outside this balloon. Now Mr.Within is saying, yo, human species, what should we do? We should in some sense start making the balloon expand until it reaches a breaking point. And what that means is, imagine philosophers in the future running in the streets shouting, hey, the greatest idea is still out there, look for it, everybody. And the whole species begins to seek the greatest vision just to see what it would be. That is the honor of living. You go forth. And even if you don't go forth, and in my youth I was so shy, I would have a paralysis where my inner realms would back off from my outer realms. So in the outer realms I was oblivious. So that's a relationship, is the void is here, and we use duality to remember the void and also access the infinite. Then let's say we think we're singular. If we were singular being right now, so in some sense language, oh man, I'm making too much of a big deal out of this, even though there's definitely more to say about this idea. What it is I'm pretty much saying is that dualism is sandwiched between the singular, the void, and also can witness the infinite. Is sandwiched between the singular and the infinite, and at any moment can recognize everything is in the void. Right? So one level of reality, everything is empty. One level of reality, there is everything. It's just everything's entrance into nothing, you know? And everything is a suggestion of consciousness, kind of like how Friedrich Nietzsche says, if a tree fell in a forest and there was no one to hear it, did a tree fall? Existence requires an audience. That means even right now, this idea of Mr. Within, it's only the people who listen who in some sense this idea can really exist. You know, sometimes I look at this life and I think through the eye when the mind appears that way, you know. And you know what it is? It's the same as television. When people watch television, they are watching worlds from elsewhere. You're literally watching another part of the world or another sort of simulation of a world based on how animated it is. So you can say we are world seekers deep down. It's not that people are seeking truth. They are seeking the ultimate moment. And to find the ultimate moment would completely mean a detachment of selfhood. That means it's like the moment, you know what it is? It's like, what does the lion that thought it was a sheep its whole life do after seeing its reflection of a lion in the pond? What this picture depicts is how much our species is thirsting for novelty. Direct experiential novelty. Imagine having a relationship not with an object but with a universal intelligence. Now that relationship transforms many people on this planet into ceremonial robots. But unfortunately, nature has a louder voice than any sort of pre-planning. There is something in nature that's like, I'm here too, regardless of how much man calculates. You know, I could think of the best vision, but nature is the true teacher. This, you see how in the picture the people feel drawn to like the archetype of Hermes, you know? It is in some sense like I felt that in nature. I have honestly, I'll tell you, when I say I've experienced selfless moments, there's been times where I've sat down in nature and there was just this simplicity where I'm like this biological breathing engine alongside an ecosystem of biological breathing engine. Everything in this planet is in some sense interdependent in the sense that we need the sun's light to see and we need oxygen to even be able to function. That means all that the body is doing is trying to access oxygen, you know, which is fascinating. Just the fact that right now we are kind of like an air-based system of intelligence, you know. So when I've been in nature, I have that those selfless moments have presented themselves as just a moment where there is no one. So, you know, imagine a moment where there was no idea, no memory, the past was not there, the future was not there, and the present had no edge. So in some sense, one can never say where they are in a world that's changing through so many different cycles and motions. Like, you know, it's as if we thought the Earth was the center of the universe. Then we're like, no way, you know, we're spinning around a giant burning ball of gas. That's what it is. And in ancient, in the I believe it's in the Vedas or something, where in Vedanta, inside the moon, excuse me, not the moon, the sun, inside the sun was inhabited by beings. And it's my personal theory that the sun is a broadcasting system with a geometrical imprint to evoke evolution on all planets. I mean, think about it. Let's say the human species, as we look at the Kardashev scale, let's say our human civilization managed to use the resources of, I think it was the energy of one's, what was it? I think it was one's planet, one's sun, and then one's galaxy. Like the 3 levels of evolution of the control of a species, of the energy of the universe. So imagine in the future, let's say 5,000 years from now, we are so advanced, and the council of human beings that their eyes will be open in that chapter of history. Our eyes are not our eyes. They are nature experiencing life first. The mind is in some sense an event inside an event. The reaction, I figured it out, the reaction of the people in this wallpaper is to beings who had lived a life as singular creatures and realized the narrative was multidimensional. Or guys, I don't know, this picture is a bit intense. Like, I don't know, maybe this guy was an alien. People just perceived him that way. And really what it is it's vision. That's all. That is the most important resource. How far we can see before darkness becomes our mirror. Emptiness becomes your mirror. If one has contentment with the 0 dimension, any system that reaches its breaking point will eventually be introduced to the 0 dimension. That means they told this person who was very old, "Where are you going?" And he's like, "I'm going to nothing, man." It's intense. And the intensity of trying to, like, having lived a life here. Sometimes I look at, the senior citizens of the world, and I'm like, oh my God, there should totally be this movement all over the planet where senior citizens are being honored and taken care of, and they at least become storytellers for humanity. The idea is we increase all types of communication, every corner of the realm, right? It's as if like minds going beyond the desires of their instincts, and in some sense establishing a sort of global platform where the intellect taps into its universal wilderness. I'll share with you a very unique experience I had in 2016. In 2016, I found myself in Tehran, the city I was born, and I had to give like an 8-minute, like a 10-minute, I finished an 8, I had to give a speech to a community of, a group of people who they all felt like they called themselves spiritual masters or something. They would call themselves Ustad this, which is the Persian word for it. And so I had 10 minutes to speak, and I remember after I finished that, there was a woman who was crying, and she came and hugged me, right? And it was a very strange experience. Imagine giving an 8-minute talk and there's that reaction alongside like applause. And then I realized it is just like the power of the simplicity of what's going on. You know what it is? We are living in such a simulation of what life should be, but what it is very simple. And when we suddenly remember that simplicity, our whole complex, psychological display, in some sense, as the yogis say, it surrenders to the divine will. That means Swami Krishnananda says the moment you realize that the individual self and the cosmic self are inseparable, that is when meditation ends. That is when you don't have to think about the idea of meditation anymore, because you have discovered the inseparability of reality. Then I think the next phase of it is we use whatever we're given. That means it's like being a human being is like holding Thor's hammer. It's like, what are you going to do next? I know in a strange intuitive way that if there was, let's say this picture was a film and I saw this movie scene, which is this picture, I would not exactly, but in my own inner realms, I would know exactly what the guy with the staff is doing. Do you know? And that glow, that halo behind his head, that is the antenna connection. That is a human being who has understood its mind infinite before the body. So the liberation, the moment it goes within, the being is free. Because so it's all about if you discover infinity first in the outer realms or the inner realms. If you discover it in the inner realms, you will go towards the transcendental route of ideology. If you discover infinity in the outer realms, you will go towards the materialistic approach to psychology, and in some sense how the mind simulates meaning in the world. Some people look at the sunset and they're like, oh my god, that's so beautiful, and some people look at the sunset and they're like, what do you think? And the person's like, I'm just looking at color, man. I don't know why people are getting emotional, so the attention could be to that level, to a level where meaning collapses the moment we zoom in on one part of the system and the rest of the system goes to a blur. And you know, whoever drew this was like an incredible artist. Oh my god. The way the people are leaned is as if it's like a. We're just creatures that are. We turn divine by novelty. Now, every human being has become like the person wearing the hat. You know, the hat with wings on it. As if this man's whole message is to, in some sense, be a bird. To fly beyond the limits of perception, because what else can we do? Just dwell in it, you know? You know, there's consequences to using rhythms. That means there's been times where I have been lazy and I've wanted to automate like the moment. That means imagine being a person and you're tired but you have to do like a lot of work. And because you're tired and you have to do a lot of work, in some sense, like either you know, throw out, like you stop, or in some sense you engage and hold on to a thought, and that thought carries you. And I'll give you an example. Imagine there's a very complex puzzle and there's two people sitting at a table given the same puzzle, and you tell one person solve this puzzle, you know, and just very casually, you can solve it, you can have as much time you want, and you tell another person solve this puzzle. If you don't solve it in time, you know, the puzzle is gonna destroy itself, you know. So in some sense, the person who suddenly has a context, a motivated, possible, reachable context, that means your mind animates in accordance to something that can be done, you know. Okay, too much music. You know, I think it's definitely a step in the right direction if every human being on the planet acknowledges that we have an inner realms and outer realms. So many conversations, problems will go away, and through a sort of multidimensional patience, reality will be understood. The simple principle is that everything in this reality, including even emptiness, can have a relationship with infinity. And space by nature is mysterious, and matter by nature is knowable. So in some sense, everything in this life, whoever you are listening to me, I'll tell you, this is the this is the vision, really. Everything has a relationship between these two gears of the known and the unknown. That means anything, any person, any idea, any object you look at, you could just see a line, like an axis, emerge from it, where you can perceive that object or phenomena or person in a chaotic context and an ordered context, in a known way, where the familiar is where our comfort is, you know, or in an unknown way, which is its novelty's evolution. Sometimes when I watch these talent shows, like on YouTube, like, you know, America's Got Talent, Britain's Got Talent, these talent shows, it's like when I see it, I'm like, I see like some of the videos have like 52 million views, right? Like this person who sang something so incredible that the whole room was silent just watching. Right? And it was like 54 million people have seen this person sing. You know, that's like a glitch in the system. So, It's as if all the people who watched that video, their attention went towards that phenomenon, towards that person singing. So you can say whether you're holding a staff or you're singing, right? The attention goes to the most animate thing in the moment. That means it's as if, imagine somebody does a backflip, and it's a very difficult backflip, and you see it and you're like, oh my god, and you clap for the person. Do you know what I mean? But if it's like so it's a sort of novel surprise, something unseen that becomes seen, and then there is the motive, the motivation, the energy. Anything a person anything a person makes important to them, they will succeed in, and this is a sort of law in the universe, and I don't know how else to say it. Right? Anything you make important, your whole attention comes. That means they say there was this article written long ago about like us using 12% of our brains, dolphins using 20. Dolphins are beating us in intelligence, guys. In brain usage, they're more advanced creatures than us. But let's say we have access to 12, but I think anytime a person makes something important, which means accessing a single point of mind, then karma has nowhere else to animate towards. Some people, they live like bridges, I would say anyone who's bilingual, or anyone who in some senses has a relationship with their own past. Some people let go of the past easily as if it's something that happened, and what else can you do about it? If the memory contributed, served the overall mover of the attention of the moment, you hold on to it, That means not all ideas need to be known in the world. It's pretty much like the person has access to a certain range, a sort of inventory of ideology, and they select what to place in that inventory of ideology. This becomes the armor for an unknown roaming mind. And we use our ability of structure, and we share, like, what else can we do, right? What else can you do with the mind? Aside from living as an individual, you can either stay in the individual state of consciousness and innovate. I think that's the smartest strategy. Or we can just all go collective and imagine that moment where the species is like, yo, why are we freaking out about extinction? We're all God anyways, and suddenly we realize that this God, that is energy being everywhere at the same time intelligently. It's as if it is the shape of our truth that suggests how much we are an individual. I roamed in selfless states. I have lived days where I have been literally like a glass orb, as the Yoga Patanjali suggested, like roaming on different moments. Like literally, it's as if I'm just attention here. That is the simplest truth. That we're just here. And Manly P. Hall worded it really nice. He said, not a lot of people are aware that they are aware right now. That it's a biological, intelligent activity trying to align to an ever-changing system. Like, it's remarkable what's going on here. The story of human life. And that's the cool thing about history, that whatever we do, we are performers. This is so true, and I will tell you, like, the reason it is because in the future, people will be watching history through video. What that means is the moment the species gets to a point where it accesses a collective mind, there can be the dangers of individual overload. What that means is truth is something that it is a complete shift in context. And if that complete shift in context takes place, the person may be like, why should I be an individual anymore? And this is where the human effort in the outer realms will be able to pull many people from their inner realms towards the stability, to you could say the stable zone of attention. So what it is, it's pretty much like we're something that's happening. Now the world is happening. How the world happens and our attitude to the world suggests the sort of simulations that the mind and the brain will produce and overlay the moment with. There's some quotes I found online from Hermes Trismegistus. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. Let me see. Let me find a bio for about this person. Hermes Trismegistus. Yeah, there we go. Hermes Trismegistus. Oh my god. Hermes the thrice greatest. Anyways, is a legendary Hellenistic figure that originated as a syncretic combination of the Greek god Hermes and the Egyptian god Thoth. He's purported author of the Hermetica, a widely diverse series of ancient and medieval texts that lay the basis of various philosophical systems known as Hermeticism. Okay. What the So it's kind of like an archetype, but I'm trying to see if it's a person. Okay, whatever, I'll read it. Hermes Trismegistus may be associated with the Greek god Hermes and the Egyptian god Thoth. Greeks in the Ptolemaic kingdom of Egypt recognized the equivalence of Hermes and Thoth through the Interpretatio Grassa. Consequently, the two gods were worshipped as one in what had been the temple of Thoth in Kemenu, which was known in the Hellenistic period as Hermopolis. Okay, this information is too detailed, so the accuracy can be doubtable, but let's say Hermes is like a collective being and there has been different antennas and in different cultures for this being. Okay? And whatever, I'll just read these quotes. So in this article he's being seen as a sage. Anyways. The world nourishes bodies, the spirit nourishes souls. The man who hath in mind in him, let him learn to know that he himself is deathless. The Father of the universals don't consist of light and life, and from him man was born. The excellence of the soul is understanding, for the man who understands is conscious, devoted, and already godlike. I long to learn the things that are, and comprehend their nature, and know God. This is, I said, what I desire to hear. But the eternal God cannot and never could be born. He is, he has been, he will be always. The nature of God is to be his own principle. Close your eyes and let the mind expand. Let no fear of death or darkness arrest its course. Allow the mind to merge with mind. Let it flow out upon the great curve of consciousness. Let it soar on the wings of the great bird of duration, up to the very circle of eternity. There we go. Yeah, evolution of the mind. Ultimately, that's where all ideologies point to. HT says, I see unspeakable depths. I also see a mind that moves the soul. By a holy ecstasy, I see him that moves me. You give me power, I see myself. I want to speak, fear holds me back. I have found the beginning of the power above all powers. And who does not himself have a beginning? I see a fountain bubbling with life. I have seen. It is impossible to express this in words. If you are mindful, Asclepius, these things will seem true to you, but they will seem incredible if you are not mindful. To understand is to have faith, and not to have faith. To understand is to have faith, and not to have faith is to not understand. Is not to understand. Reason, discourse, logos does get to the truth, but mind, nous, is powerful, and when it has been guided by reason, logos up to a point, it has the means to get as far as the truth. Okay. So you can say the role of the inner realms, just to quickly make this remark, is to get us to towards the closest point towards truth. So the logos wants to get us to the closest point of truth. That's our strategy. The advanced civilization is following that vision. That it's a symbiosis of man with universal intelligence to participate in greater events, whether inner or outer. Anyways, back to the quote tunnel. In the moment when you have nothing to say about it, you will see it, for the knowledge, gnosis, of it is divine silence and suppression of all the senses. One who has understood it can understand nothing else, nor can one who has looked on it look on anything else, or hear of anything else, nor can he move his body in any way. He stays still, all bodily senses and motions forgotten. This is a meditative presence-filled state. The form of the universe is that of a hollow sphere, having in itself the cause of its quality or of its figure, wholly invisible. If choosing any given point of its surface, one should seek to behold its depths, one would be unable to see anything. It appears visible only by means of those special forms whose images appear graven upon it. It shows itself only in effigy, but in reality it is always invisible in itself. Yeah, because if we say everything is intelligent, then it's not local to anything. That means an unconditional intelligence would be how like all the cells in your body are being you, and so you don't have a shape to all the cells of your body that are being you again. So that's what I'm saying. If then you do not make yourself equal to God, you cannot apprehend God, for like is known by like. Leap clear of all that is corporeal, and make yourself grown to a like expanse with that greatness which is beyond all measure. Rise above all time and become eternal, then you will apprehend God. Think that for you too nothing is impossible. Deem that you too are immortal, and that you are able to grasp all things in your thought. To know every craft and science, find your home in the haunts of every living creature. Make yourself higher than all the heights and lower than all depths. Bring together in yourself all opposites of quality, heat and cold, dryness and fluidity. Think that you are everywhere at once, on land, at sea, and heaven. Think that you are not yet begotten, that you are in the womb, that you are young, that you are old, that you have died, that you are in the world beyond the grave. Grasping your thoughts, all of this at once, all times and places, all substances and qualities and magnitudes together, then you can apprehend God. So what that passage is saying, guys, is in some sense an internal apocalypse. And when I created the concept of language, the language threshold, I felt that was the best way to introduce that really intelligence doesn't have to be categorized through symbology, that it is simply nature's movement, and we are a part of it. And so nature is like we are royal guests of the natural world. And when we realize we're guests, we don't impose, yet we enjoy, the scenery, Oh, and sorry guys, there's more to the code which I didn't read. So it says, but if you so the last thing was, then you can apprehend God. But if you shut up your soul and your body and abase yourself and say, I know nothing, I can do nothing, I'm afraid of earth and sea, I cannot mount to heaven, I know what I was nor what I shall be, then what have you to do with God? Right? So he's saying, if you have dared to call yourself a truth seeker in this life, you have to be true with the truth. And which means you have to be embracive of all that your life force is, and in some sense wait. And what it is I'm pretty much saying people should go into peaceful states, wait, and the universe, through its own unknown logos, will call upon you, and you will find your moment in the realm. Right? So what I mean is just get to the state where, that truth can see you, if it is. HT says, let us begin to speak of mind and of other similar things. In the beginning were God and Hyle, and Hylit and Hyle. It is thus that the Greek terms the first matter or substance of the universe. The spirit was the universe, but not in the same manner as with God. The things which constitute the universe are not God. Therefore, before their birth, they were not in existence, but they were already contained in that form which they were produced. For besides and without created things is not only that which is not yet born, but that also which has no generative fecundity, and which can bring forth nothing. Everything which has the power of generating contains in germ all that can be born of it. For it is easy to that which is brought forth to bear that which shall bring forth. But the eternal God cannot and never could be born. He is, he has been, he will be always. The nature of God is to be his own principle. But matter, or the nature of the world and mind, although appearing to be brought forth from the beginning, possess the power of birth and of procreation, fecundative energy. For the beginning is in the quality of nature, who possesses in herself the potentiality of conception and of production. She is then without any foreign intervention the principle of creation. It is otherwise with that which possesses only the power of conception by means of mixing with a second nature. The matrix of the universe and of all that it contains appears not to have been itself born, holding however within it potentially all nature. I call that the matrix which contains all things, for they could not have been without a vehicle to contain them. Everything which exists must exist in some place or vehicle. Neither qualities nor quantities nor positions nor effects could be distinguished in things, having no place and being nowhere. Thus the world, although not having been born, has in it the principle of all birth, since it affords all things a fitting matrix for conception. It is then the sum total of qualities and of matter susceptible of creation, although not yet created. I think I'll end the quote tunnel here, guys. So these Hermes Trismegistus quotes were, in my opinion, just pointers to how when one accesses the ultimate, there is no doer. That's pretty much ancient wisdom, ancient mystical wisdom. That the simulation cannot exist. That means the simulation is a simulation. It's like it cancels itself out. You know, truth is the origin, and truth is not a belief. I don't know how people can believe in truth, you know, because if truth is in the room, it is true. Everything is true. You know, if truth is not in the room, then you can, you know, endlessly believe things, you know. And what is truth? It means there is a source to change. Communication is obviously a very ancient art. You know, there's so many things we don't know. And because we don't know, the mind can only fill the gaps through animating it. You know, every Western society and the educational system is so inspired by Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. What people don't know, all those, the records of all those people were just in a library that was hidden, and somebody found that library, you know. So what it is the meaning of the world is kept like Venice, the city. It's kept in the unknown through language. You know, language is the pillars that keep reality's meaning. You know, I never thought I'd be actually giving a podcast on life, you know. Sometimes when I look at life, it is a very strange, endlessly moving force. And what can one do? You know, you can't call it good because there's bad moments. You can't call it bad because there's good moments. You know, because you notice good and bad moments, you can't say there's only good and bad. You know. And so then we go beyond the language threshold, and the species is like, what do we do next? And it has to come either with a silent, energetic harmony. That means we got to create some sort of bridge in trying to have people ascribe language to emotions in a way so much more complex than how we perceive emotions now, right? So every human being, by being honest in regards to what has really happened in their inner realms and sharing that to the world, and imagine in the future there's a database, you know, of human experiences. And this database of human experiences transcends the clumsiness of like internet. I'm talking about like we as human beings even have a great library of human names, and all the human beings who have lived and will go on to live, all their names are in the library in accordance to time. And it's this giant spiraling library, like into like an elevator, imagine, into space or something. Like we can animate it like that. Right, so what I'm saying is like, to access infinity makes the dual surrender. To access emptiness through singularity makes the dual surrender, right? That means that's the whole thing, you know, like evil was separate from truth, good was truth. And of course, contexts change, you know. When you think about all the other species and you look at the human species, you're like, thank God we made mistakes. You know what I mean? If we hadn't made mistakes, there would be no storyline to reality. But when the mistakes became greater than the potential deficiency, that's when civilization was pushed in the shadows of its own ambition. You know, the mind can generate location, and it's pretty much Photoshop. For like visualization is literally like Photoshop. I'm not joking. Somebody who's used the, you know, Photoshop, like that, you can totally, in your inner realms, move objects, shape them, have them have different speeds, you know. I have been in dark rooms, and in my inner realms I have visualized candles in the air, and those candles being incredibly bright, right, in my inner realms, in my imagination. But it was like it was having an influence, right? So that means it's like the mind. And even when we dream, look at what's happening. Your body's asleep, but your mind is creating a body for you which you can move in the dream. Like, what the hell is that, right? So the mind is simulating human life regardless of if there is existence or not when we dream at night, right? So what it means is, in the day the mind is still dreaming. We think we wake up, but the mind is still, the inner realms are still functioning. So I would say the inner realms is all those thoughts that got associated to the heart. So language is paint, and the mind which enters this realm is the paintbrush. So the inner realms is like how memory and all the probabilities of that memory are accessible to you, and with the whim of your, like with an instant of moving your attention, your inner realms can animate. That means it's like saying to people, visualize like a soccer ball just like hovering in the air, right? So everybody can visualize that, right? That's not complex, or visualize any object just hovering a meter in the air. Like right now, as I'm giving this talk, I'm looking at this coffee cup, and I can visualize it like exactly a meter hovering in the air. I could visualize it very quickly going into the air. I could visualize it very slowly going in the air. I could visualize while it's going in the air, it's going to tip over somehow. So the mind can animate in the inner realms. So and the inner realms take, I think, way less energy, right? So a person can live multiple lives in their inner realms poetically in one moment of life. Right? Due to our multidimensional nature, especially for those people who are not fighting duality anymore. That means it's ignorance as well. Reality is just a natural event. Like it's just, poetically I called it the great happening. Something great is happening. We're all being. There will come a time in human history where the species will so compassionately advance that we will become teachers to all the other species. We will be talking to all those creatures that we've been consuming. It's messed up, but like it will happen. Of course, our expressionism has its limits too. So, let's say whatever movement happens in your mind or inner realms, let's say, in the outer realms, you're limited to certain, let's say, channels of expression. A person can express their inner realms through the voice, through a technique that uses sound. A person can express their inner realms through how their biological system and their gestures, and in some sense how their behavior is. Like, for example, sometimes when I talk, my hands are in the air as if I'm building what I'm explaining, So, expression through the voice, which has led to language. Expression through the biology, which has led to behavior or body language, And then another sort of expression we have is harmonized living, which allows reality co-creation. So it's as if man no longer fears image through a responsive understanding. That means everything in life can be understood, which means it can be observed until it can be placed into a meaningful context in the memory of the person, the attention of the person. You know, because we're here once, it's as if the conscience will have a discussion with the persona, with the ego, and in some sense in that discussion the conscience will tell the ego, hey man, you're here once, choose the level of intensity of reality you go through. And then what the personality does is, it's like you're in an all-you-can-eat buffet, but you're here for a limited time, and there's so many pathways of just moving. And civilization will only become advanced only if these four dimensions we find contentment with, we respond to. That means imagine extraterrestrials landing, being like, yo, these human beings, they're super chill about emptiness. Do you know? They have through love understood like oneness, you know, and then they have used their duality, their ignorance, and they have recycled their ignorance towards infinite clarity. Do you know? And so we would then have a very profound position, because with what we were given, we did the most advanced thing. And it's like, how else is fascination, you know, the flames of fascination arrive, you know? I should say arise. You know, and sometimes I look at this life and I'm like, we're all travelers in this space-time continuum. And everybody has, as the saying goes, a battle going on that nobody else sees. That means we require to manage our outer realms and our inner realms. But the inner realms, eventually in life, because it's just like a film that's going forward, a film on play, right? The inner realms are honestly like, you can surf them. Just like how beautiful music can capture someone, you know, like incredible, beautiful music. I'm pretty sure when Beethoven and Mozart were playing piano, people, like at that time, were like, yo, this is like some alien shit. You know? So people at that time would respond to novelty as if it is like the divine or other. We are all reaching for something, and there can till the endless time be endless levels of, you know, wing-hatted people holding staffs. What that means is reality can be an infinite simulation. So every person has a choice in the archetypes that they function through. That means the best way to explain an archetype, which is you know, you can say an internal construct of the mind, you know, which is like a pattern, a giant pattern, macro pattern, and unknown. You can say just any archetype can access infinity if the whole context of the world is infinite. Imagine we created advanced spacecraft and advanced jet engines, and then suddenly we went to the edge of the universe and we hit like a glass like ceiling or something, like a glass wall, right? And we're like, no way, we found the edge of our universe, you know? Okay. So I'm back, guys. Needed a quick intermission. Ultimately, we are energy, and it's really similar to just an elemental kind of usage, right? You know, so the body exists. What do we do with an intelligent body? The body expresses this intelligence to the environment. What does the environment do with the intelligence? The intelligence goes into a field, and then in nature it will have its influence on a collective system. What that means is right now on this planet, because we have humanized everything out of fear of the void, we only feel a humanized context is capturing the meaning of reality. But do you know how many energetic events could be happening on this planet that we know nothing about? That means if there are greater dimensions, that means there could be invisible guests. Or as Terence McKenna very incredibly said, there's another tenant in the room. That is the wonder of the divine. And all, whether the person was a native Amazonian, you know, aiming towards a psychedelic approach, you know, whether the person was an ancient yogi going towards the yogic path of uniting with everything, you know, whether the person didn't believe in everything but in living their individual life couldn't avoid everything, you know. And so eventually you see they are all going towards infinity. That means it's as if the number 0 is a general and its army is the singular dimension, and the number infinity is like a general, and in some sense its army is the dualistic dimension. And these two dimensions are at war, imagine. So what that means is emptiness and infinity are pulling everything in the universe towards themselves, right? And based on us suddenly found in this battlefield, let's say, we are being pulled towards the infinite or the void. Now, if you're a human being who you have been suffering, and you have an equation where peace is greater than advanced civilization, then you are here on this planet to be a mind, right? So if all those people seeking enlightenment, you need to discover your mind and then become content with your mind, and then the body reanimates. Everybody knows that this is what life happens once. And because in this format, at least with these perceptions, it happens once. And because it happens once, that's the only reason we're suffering. Because we feel that we have a limited time to do things. But if a person begins engaging with a perspective that truth has nowhere else to go other than the here and now, that means you suddenly realize everything is happening at once, regardless of what language tells you a story. When you attain that state, I am telling you, not only your communication can become poetically, divinely automated, but what happens is the concept of divinity and any narrative context goes away, and then it is just raw experience. So what that means is it's like watching a surfer, like on ocean waves, and that surfer, you're like, is the surfer moving himself, or is there another intelligence moving the self? And you see, no, there's something else that's moving, and the surfer is riding the wave. So all that the surfer needs to do is to be able to have let's say her feet on the surfboard. And so it's like it's like, oh man, how do I say it? It's as if we need to live a conscious life in the same way, where the idea of us is actually surfing the void, and we walk into various narratives that we choose to make real in accordance to how much we act in it. That means, believe it or not, I think future stand-up comedians are going to say a lot of jokes about how human beings thought they could know each other. Because it is true, we can know in accordance to how much we share our inner realms, but there are dimensions beyond language that we can't do anything about. So you can say, after you have utilized language, your mind, I don't want to say your mind is like a weapon, like a sword, but if we were to use that analogy, it would be as if every person's mind and awareness and how much they have realized what is going on as their intelligence in this realm, it's like the type of sword you have. Do you know? It's like, back in the day, like you see this in, even in modern video games, where the character in some sense can have various approaches to the moment, whether it's a defensive approach, whether it's an offensive approach, when it's a sneak approach, or whatever sort of strategy a person wants to implement, right? The world turns regardless of whatever we do. I feel like reading an essay and then maybe ending this talk. I feel like let me see. So guys, in 2015, something I can say is that there was something fascinating going on in my life where it was the writer's year of my life. I wrote so much in 2015 that I'll never forget it, And all those writings were all expressions of vision, as if I had just realized I'm like an antenna. Everybody's an antenna, but like I'm saying, I had realized I am an antenna. And then I was looking at the content of my mind. I was wondering about the speed of my thoughts. I was wondering about the image, the narratives, the emotions. And then once you see this principle of interdependency behind your eyes, the recognition that you are the creator of the meaning of the mind is an enlightenment. So what it means is the world is in this game of cause and effect, but people, they, instead of identifying with how they are causally a relationship with existence, they are identifying with how they are an effect. It's as if not only the forces of nature are giving us a hard time, but cruel politicians have their ways too. And so what it means is that reality has to find a greater vision that recalibrates the moral structure of 8 billion beings in an instant. And so just like this person holding the staff, there is a calling to a moment, do you know? And what it means is that it's the evolution of mind beyond matter, to the degree that the inner realms cared so much for the outer realms that we lived for it. Right now people are living for the void. They are living for their own idea until their own idea fades. And deep down I know, because we have inner realms, we till the end of time as an evolutionary animal, we want to share our eyes. It's just like how we eat food and drink water. You know, we are an expressive creature that animates. Now, how much it animates is in accordance to its purpose, right? And there are some events in nature that wake you up. When you realize so many people on the planet are suffering, it's like the mind goes into this sudden shock. Because sometimes when a person has a reality check, what they discover is that the world is way more crueler and vicious than how they have in some sense held it in words. Everything is design. Oh man. You know, sometimes when I get tired, the world just becomes geometry, you know. Right now I'm looking for an essay I wrote in 2015 from the source of language, this unpublished work for now. Source of language. Let me see. There's an essay I wrote which is titled, "How Do You Exist?" How do you exist? This question how do you exist? Question mark. That's the first sentence of the essay. This question is not pointed at an individual mind that considers separation as the premise for reality. As all words are found to remain, all beings of a wordless unified as all words are found to remind all beings of a wordless unified paradise, how you exist in a common setting of consideration will find itself looking through the void mirror of destiny and realizing beyond the self all that is all that is. So who is asking the question? When ideology has become your artwork and you have self-inquired about the deepest aspects of the architecture of your consciousness and self-awareness, all reality demands a sky that holds all within nothing. If consciousness can be seen through geometric halos behind the head of a selfless monk, how does the yogi transcend the whispers of materiality that suggest finishing a mission is the only way? Your attention is the only currency in an industry that is void to even begin with.
Observe, study, then absorb the nature of your thought and wonder about the true nature of how we exist. Is language rigged with ignorance, or is the consciousness so supreme that it is testing itself? All phenomena is an advent of consciousness. Consciousness, as it remembers beyond the I am in quotations entity, becomes a source of wisdom never before seen. The mystery of life is more exciting than the death of words. Beyond the conceptual reality, we are free beyond space and time. For God's sakes, we are beings in language, but we are not of it. As our world reminds how the bird of paradise was not caged in an earthen cage. Beyond the self, there are no questions and answers. The simplicity of complex creation is the creator. Be free beyond an idea. For the Sadhu, there is a war of language going on. The wonder of an eternal view is just the remembrance of a moment beyond the imagination that is light years ahead of a blind linearized logic. As equivocal as it may seem, there are always hidden paths in your reality. Sorry guys, I just lost where I was reading. As equivocal as it may seem, there are always hidden paths in your reality, but they all lead towards the self-discovery of the source of mind, which language is just the shadow on the wall of. There is no battle with pure or impure thoughts. The source of language may be said to be like a group of peaceful pigeons, blocking the sun but revealing the one light as they disperse into their innate natural disposition. We're not here to build temples and transcend through them, so do you really need the temple? Our economy, just like our science, must never forget about humanity. If there is a religion you want to pursue, let humanity in quotations never be forgotten. I shall elaborate beyond technological paradigms, for our car keys go into the engine when we open our eyes in the morning. Study how you are consciousness and transcend into your sincerest nature. And once you have played with the fullness of the world, wonder about the nature of the empty. Abstraction is a mountain peak in which every poet has wondered how to climb. But as the mystic knows, language is an unnecessary show. What is the essence of your self-awareness, and who are you answering to? In today's depression-era, ideology must be eradicatedly commanded into its proper place. But if God shall help us, your sincerity will also belong to the whole world. You're either with us or not with us, or even beyond the yin-yang symbol, but the roots of your existence must be sought from within. Could your sensory perception be sought from within? As you realize that every human being is in the universe of a suggested billion trillion stars. Back in the day, consciousness didn't exist, and time and space cannot testify. Playfully reinterpreted, the world is being drawn based upon how much we have drawn upon the mystery of the presence beyond personality of nature. But as transcendental ideas confront the void and are synchronistically activated, one will soon realize the loving hand of an almighty intelligence beyond all, that is made of the love of the whole universe. Listen to your greatest guide, the moment of existence that is now. Your hand is already on the steering wheel. The unknown nation of images that we call our imagination in quotations must be explored in empty and multidimensional ways. You are the source, and you are beyond the you in quotations. Who is reading this book? ? Slow hand clap for the mind that is self-reflectively transforming the world. Be more interested than an atheist uncle who's willing to be a robot because he thinks there's nothing else. There's an intelligence within nature that must not be ignored. Beyond unspeakable focus, the divine administers all things in space. Who holds the known and the unknown in their hand, and is it right or must it be left behind? Once the unattainable is observed, the attainable has become a presence beyond the idea of a liberation beyond words. Kaleidoscope dash thinking must be promoted for the mystic that seeks the ultimate within, beyond ideology that is too temporal to wait. Who are you when eternity is your essence? When transcendental perspectives, when the multidimensional connects to the dual, it becomes the teacher. So what it means is, imagine a triangle. Let's forget about the number 0 and space, and just think that in this life there is the singular, the dual, and the infinite. The relationship of the singular with the infinite, we call that immortality. The relationship of the singular with the dual, we call that eternity. Either our mind accesses the infinite being first, or remembers itself as nature, or in some sense the body accesses it, reaches it first. If our bodies become immortal before our minds, there is no telling how a mind lingers, because we are not even an individual in some sense. We are how our attention moves in the moment to animate and to respond to every stimulus. And this is a suggestion how our species was freaking out when people could actually talk. Can you imagine? We were just like silent animals walking around, and then suddenly one of us began to talk, and then all of us began to talk, and then in our speech we managed to share our visions. And now we have that ability, but people are not sharing, the efficiency of their inner realms, And all of it is towards flight. I am telling you, man's mind can fly, but his body... his body is, in some sense, it has its own destiny. So anyways, guys, in this episode, I hope that the significance of wondering about your mind has become clear. How we use the inner realms is usually we also use it to respond to situations. So if the mind begins trying to have this attitude where if there is a problem, all the energy of the body is being used to find the most instantaneous solution. Now, to find the most instantaneous solution, there has to be a freedom to consider the past and the future at the same time. So it's as if looking at something on a geometric level, then interpreting that geometric level and relating it to a singularity of identity. That singularity of identity, in some sense, becomes reflective. I don't know how else to explain it, but it's as if, like, first there is stuff, but stuff is actually shape and color, and it's as if, like, shape and color are being stuff, the first linkage, then we have, in some sense, stuff being us. So we have, that's the second link, where, with the material universe, if it was like Neo from the Matrix, it has two wires connecting to his brain to go into the simulation. Right, one wire from a different computer and one from another computer, imagine. Anyways, guys, I hope this episode was helpful. Writing is a crucial point, I gotta say. So you can write your inner realms as well. People who have diaries, you have automatically been doing this. You know, any human being who has felt like communicating on paper, this is like an ancient art form. I'm not joking. Like, writing is what is revelation. You know what I mean? That means people on this planet have treated writing as the absolute truth. You know, right? So writing is a very unique art, and when a person writes, they are kind of like slowly designing. When a person speaks, they have the privilege to fly through, right? So that's the advantage of speech. You know, even though there's mistakes, but it manages to get through more ideas. So writing of some sort, and the way I say it, like this, think of it that this is one of Mr. Within's meditations, okay? So what is this meditation? People go buy a stack of printer paper, and it's important that they at least do this once. That means if you don't want to buy paper, just do this once, right? So get a stack of printer paper, you know, get rid of the case, and then put the stack of printer paper with a pen that is new and not used before, right? And put that pen on the stack of paper, and put this somewhere where you pass by, like somewhere where you would put a vase, you know, you know, or something, like where you would put a lamp. Put it there, you know, and don't touch this piece of paper as if it's like a relic, you know, as if it's like you only touch that. Now oh my god. The thing is, you only touch the pen and start writing when you get an idea that is so important that if you do not write it down, it is gone for the day. It is gone with the day, as one starts from consciousness and then eventually, you know, flows into unconsciousness. Anyways, thanks for listening, guys, and imagery can be taken as seriously as we want it. My relationship with all ideas is that man cannot be a thought and cannot be an idea, and therefore in any situation I find in my life, I am more an observer of, you know, the observed, meaning that this life happens regardless of what we do. And really, even though we have free will and we promote the free will and the individualism, and we want individuals to become polymaths so that the species can advance the quickest, you know. And so how we can do this is by having not only an ultimate motive in the background of daily living, but at the same time realizing that everything a person does, it is in some sense a part of the show that will never be seen again. That means sometimes when I give these talks, it's a very strange feeling, because I am sharing something from my inner realms, but because I know I will move on from it, in some sense the idea is gone, right? And so that's how the mind works, you know. Our attention, it's the same thing with a child, like, you know, a young child who in some sense there is a toy, right, and the child is happy. You take the toy away, the child cries, right? You give the toy back, the child is happy. And when the child cried, it wasn't like, I'm unlucky, why don't I get what I want, you know? So the child didn't have a personality. It was as if just the state. So prior to even communicating through the language of words, we were communicating through the language of states, what kind of state we were in, right? And it is only through honor where we can honor a singular point as a sort of central reference, as if the headquarter of human psychology is the idea of the advanced human being. That's it. That means that's the first headquarters. That means we play that role first. You know, language helps us realize that if we create a system so advanced, and if we make a mistake, the system can use that mistake to advance. So it would be a system where first trust is activated by nature. You know, this is man's challenge against technology. We either unite in an incomprehensibly compassionate, mind-blowingly loving way, in the sense that progress is our aim, we slowly leave the world, right? Because every being knows that there is an exit point, right? And it's a very strange feeling, you know. This life it appears as our control paper, This is like an explanation through Vedic thought of the levels of reality. And whatever context a person has to reality, because we have to live and express, we will ultimately be doing it in where our attention is. So some people are trying to think their way in life, and some people are like, yo, there's this unknown attention beaming out of my eyes as the whole awareness to the moment, and what's up with that, right? So we shift the context to one that is already victorious, and our faith becomes untouchable, and then advancement finds you. So advancing communication is the purpose of the mind in the world, and advancing civilization through the visions accessible through the how advanced we communicate. Advancing like the outer realms, like our wings open, and the inner realms like our wings open, and it's like a samadhi towards the clarity of the one. Anyways, guys, thanks for listening, and I'll be on Discord for a little while for those